Canada is in deep trouble. And according to their Prime Minister,
we made some mistakes.
Justin Trudeau's approval rating has dropped from 65% in September of 2016 to 28% this month. And next year is an election year where Trudeau seeks to pull off what his father couldn't, be re-elected for a fourth consecutive term. It's clear though that Trudeau messed up, and now Canadians simply can't afford to live.
Currently living in her van after she was forced out of her apartment because the cost of rent climbed.
There's an immigration crisis, housing crisis, and a skilled labor shortage crisis. The repercussions of Trudeau's decisions are real. The rental wage has risen significantly. In 2023, the rental wage in Toronto was estimated at $36.50 per hour, far above the minimum wage of $15.50, meaning you need to earn over double the minimum wage to survive in Toronto. But that's just scratching the surface here. This story goes much deeper the further we get into this video, and as we uncover what's really happening in Canada and where Trudeau lost his support. What we need to understand first is that the way Canada is structured is a recipe for disaster. First and foremost, the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the government surrounding him don't have ultimate power over the country, since Canada operates under a system of government where legislative powers are divided between the federal parliament, the provincial legislatures under it, and the municipalities under that. Basically, federal powers include national concerns such as defense, trade and commerce, banking, criminal law, and immigration, which we will get back to, but provincial powers encompass areas like property and civil rights, education, health services, and other local matters. Most important for this story, though, are the municipalities that have their own authority, including creating and enforcing zoning laws within their jurisdiction. These laws regulate land use, determining how properties in different zones can be developed or used. What this means is that if the federal government decides to, let's say, increase the number of immigrants coming into Canada, it's the job of the municipalities to build enough housing to accommodate them. This works brilliantly in a fantasy world where every single municipality's councillors get informed exactly how many immigrants they will have to accommodate and have the competence and tax dollars to build enough homes to house them. And as it turns out, that's too big of an ask. See, it's important to understand that Canada historically has been very much in favour of immigration, and Canadians believed it strengthened their country. This is partly because they have a merit-based immigration system, where any migrants wishing to move to Canada must pass the merit standards, including a language and prerequisite class, so they can be sure that only people useful to the Canadian economy get in. Throughout history, Canada has relied on immigration to grow their economy and to populate more of their country. So immigration is nothing new, and it's always been a great thing for Canada. Therefore, this constellation of government powers wasn't a problem historically. But Trudeau turned the flow of migrants to the max, but the municipalities did little to accommodate them. They primarily left it up to the private sector to do something about it, and that's a recipe for disaster when these municipalities also had zoning laws that stated only single-family houses could be built. No apartment complexes allowed. Now, what does this create? Well, urban sprawl for one, but secondly, a bunch of luxury homes no average Canadian can afford. Since why would developers build affordable housing when they could make a much bigger profit making luxury houses for investors? And that's where we get to the next big problem here. Domestic and international investors have been able to buy these houses as well. And if you allow investors to buy up single-family housing, there's no real limit to how high these prices can get, which is part of the reason behind this chart. Home prices increase exponentially while the disposable income is left behind. Now, I've mentioned immigration a couple of times now, and it's time we address the elephant in the room. Immigration is what Trudeau considered a miscalculation, as he not only let in millions of immigrants looking for permanent residency, he also let in millions of people seeking temporary residency. And he kind of forgot to account for these temporary residents, so suddenly there were way too many people in Canada and too little housing. But that's only part of the story, because he also didn't close a very clever loophole these temporary residents exploited. Now, to be clear, when we discuss temporary residents, we are primarily discussing international students and temporary foreign workers. So here's what they did. The international students enrolled in prerequisite programs such as language courses and were granted study permits to work off campus. Some students, though, exploited this by working without completing the required courses. Then we have the temporary foreign workers, who are allowed into the country when the temporary foreign worker program permits Canadian employers to hire them for temporary roles when qualified Canadians are unavailable. However, some employers misuse this program to hire foreign workers for positions that could be filled by Canadians, often because they could offer lower wages and poorer working conditions. So Canada ended up with millions of temporary residents who were happy to work for a minimum wage, pushing out the Canadians from the job market. Which brings me to the next thing that doesn't really make sense, the labor shortage. It's kind of strange how a country with so many recent arrivals can have a labor shortage, but it's true. Canadian manufacturing has experienced skill scarcity for years. Its recent growth is unparalleled though. The percentage of manufacturers reporting understaffing increased to over 80% in 2022, up from 39% in 2016, meaning the labor shortage has more than doubled in the last decade. So you're caught up to speed now. There are too many people, too little housing, a labor shortage, and loopholes that should have been closed ages ago. So how does Trudeau plan on solving this to win the election and get Canada back on the right track? Well, Trudeau unveiled a housing plan a few months ago and an immigration plan a few weeks ago. And it's fair to say the Canadians are not happy. First, the housing plan. The goal is to make more affordable housing, so they've introduced several measures like the Housing Accelerator Fund, a $4 billion initiative. With it, they're targeting the missing middle housing, think duplexes, triplexes, and mid-sized apartment complexes, that can bridge the gap between luxury homes and crowded apartment buildings. But the catch, municipalities need to actually implement these policies, and that could take years. And so far, Vancouver, Toronto, and Edmonton are the only municipalities that have loosened the zoning laws for single-family housing. But only Edmonton allows apartment complexes, and small ones at that. The rest have simply said, you know what, it's okay you build maybe 2 houses on your plot, maybe 4, but that's stretching it. Like, I don't understand the resistance against apartment complexes. I mean, they're in a housing crisis. Wouldn't apartment complexes be a great way to get the most possible housing in the smallest possible area to prevent further urban sprawl? It doesn't make sense to me, but anyway, I regress. Next, they've removed the goods and services tax on new rental construction. The goal is to make it more financially appealing to create affordable housing rather than homes for wealthy investors. And they extended the federal ban on foreign investment in Canadian housing by 2 years to January 1st, 2027. Now to the immigration plan. Trudeau's government is pulling back. They've announced plans to reduce immigration targets over the next few years, essentially halting population growth for 2 years. It's also worth mentioning that they expect 5 million temporary visa holders to just leave next year voluntarily. I mean, I guess we'll have to see how that turns out, but anyway, they're also tightening eligibility requirements for international students and foreign workers to ensure that only those who meet Canada's needs get in. They will also prioritize immigrants with the necessary skills to help solve the labor shortage. Finally, they've started to address the loopholes, like cracking down on misrepresentation in the temporary foreign worker program and reworking how study permits are issued. But here's the real question. Is this enough? These policies sound decent, at least on paper, but the housing crisis didn't happen overnight. Municipalities still need to overhaul outdated zoning laws, and if the comments on Trudeau's YouTube video explaining the immigration plan is anything to go by, the upcoming election might be his last. Thanks for watching. My name is Oliver, and this is the first time you probably see my face, and I just wanted to give some words on like why I'm showing my face for the first time here on the OBF channel. And honestly, it's just because I wanted to try something new, and I'm finally comfortable with showing my face on my channel. So hopefully you guys like it. Leave a comment down below to let me know what you think. But yeah, I'll try this for a while to see if I like it and if you guys like it. So other than that, that's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.